So, what is the point of life? You know, I find myself thinking about what is the point of life. To me, it seems that answering that question is about as much the point of life as anything I can think of. But the point of life is to try to understand life. I look at things and I think about how much work goes into them and everything. And very often, just thinking about how much work goes into producing certain things, no matter how small, can be exhausting just to think about. In my little room here with what would seem not to be very many objects, there's actually millions and millions of people that went into producing all these objects just in this little room. Just think about the clothes that I have. If I have dozens of items of clothing, maybe a dozen pair of pants, a dozen or 2 dozen shirts, a couple dozen pairs of socks, shoes. The amount of people involved in producing these items alone is just incredible. There's the people that had to sew them. There's the people that had to create the fabric. There's the people that had to create the raw materials of whether it's from the sheep or from cotton, to produce that fabric. The people that had to create the sewing needles, the people that had to create the sewing machines, the people that had to package these things and ship them off, and people had to drive the trucks, and people had to create the trucks that drove them, and then they arrive at the stores and people have to unload them, and the store personnel have to put them on the shelves, and there have to be people to buy them, and somebody else drives it, takes it home. That's just for clothing. How many people are involved in producing a computer? How many people are involved in producing each piece of furniture and the rugs? It's staggering. And all the dishes and pots and pans, not to mention the food in the refrigerator, not to mention the refrigerator. It's just overwhelming. And I watch a movie and you think about how many people were involved with producing this movie. Not just the actors, there's the writers, there's all the people in the orchestra, there's all the people doing the camera work, all the people that it took to build those cameras, all the people designing the sets and the costumes and the choreography and everything. It's just overwhelming. And you look at the end product. You can have all these thousands of people involved in a movie, and it ends up being an hour and a half that you watch and you go, and you forget about it. Because maybe it wasn't even that great of a story anyhow. No matter how lousy of a story, no matter how uninteresting it might be, and no matter how poor the acting, it still takes these thousands and thousands of people just to produce the thing. And it's overwhelming. How much effort people put into everything that exists in our society, and yet how little worth there is to most of it. when you get right down to it. So I think about these things. I think about what is the point of life. And it seems to me the point of life, I mean, if it were up to me, it just seems too much effort to produce most things. Even the worst things that you have no use for, that there's not even any reason for it to exist. There's thousands of people involved in producing that thing. Producing it and marketing it, selling it and advertising it, and stocking it on the shelves, just so it can sit there and be a flop, because nobody has any real use for it, because it was a pointless thing to begin with. And if it were up to me, there would be practically nothing. If it were actually up to me to get her, now I can come up with the idea of doing things. I can say, wouldn't it be great if we had this and we had that? But when it comes around to actually making the effort to create the thing, that's a different story. Then it's like, I'm not sure I really want it. It's not worth the effort. If it were up to me, most things that we have wouldn't have come into existence at all. There wouldn't be cars. There wouldn't be computers. There wouldn't be sound recording. There probably wouldn't even be musical instruments if it were up to me to actually produce them. But if somebody else is going to do it, and all I have to do is come up with the idea and say, wouldn't it be great if we had this or that, then I'm way ahead of you. Because I'm not wasting my effort on sitting around trying to produce things. And I have all this energy to be free to imagine whatever I want to imagine. So when I look at life, and I try to think about what it's all about, and it tends to come down to the question of who are we and how do we think? Who are people and how do they get their attitude and their state of mind? And there are definitely a lot of people. I mean, we're essentially the same item. Human beings are essentially as similar to each other as bees are to each other. You see billions of bees, and to us they all look exactly identical. And aren't human beings really? Some are a bit fatter, some are a bit taller or shorter, some have blonde hair, some have darker hair. But these are very superficial physical differences. Other than that, physically we're all basically the same design. And our needs are basically the same.